Hi, we're Oxygen Conservation, and this is the Shoe Room Sessions.
Yeah. And ever since I was a child, it used to be one of my favorite things to do was writing. And, my friends comment, I do that thing that you do in English fast when you get put a sentence and then have to write the story from it. That was like company.
Nice.
Um,
Because I totally wasn't like
Yeah.
so I did degree into PhD and reluctantly wrote through those periods. It was always terrible. I was always a data guy and a maths geek. So writing I've come to much later in life.
yeah. Love that. I mean, it's muscle like anything else. And what you said at the beginning, where you said, writing to formulate your ideas and put them out there, that's exactly what everybody says that you should do. But basically through this like pivot in my business. It started in 2019, and this last year really, really sat in it. And
It was the memory that made you smile then. When you thought about something in 2019, there was a particular thought or memory that popped into your head that just made the biggest smile. What was it?
what's really weird is that genuinely last year, 2024, was the like most challenging year of my life, and that is what made me smile. Is that it happened, and just why it happened, or why I think it happened, I probably won't know, or maybe later on in years' time I'll be able to turn up the dust. But I think, having those really challenging times for your business, or you're pivoting, so you're having to sit in a lot of uncertainty, and your identity shifting, and so much death and rebirth, and all that kind of stuff. It's so hard, but I guess that's so cool to me. Is like that's what life is the difficult situations and things that we challenge us, and sitting in that and consistently showing up and just saying, okay, this is not happening to crush me, or to, it's happening for a reason, and I'm gonna try and find out. And now I'm coming at the other side of it. So that's like the whole thing's what makes me smile. I'm just like, bring it on, life. Come on.
Awesome. I couldn't be more excited for the start of the podcast. Can we just run straight into this? Yeah.
Like shit to waffle and don't know how much I'm happy we are to be here. If you want to hear it. So that'll life.
And you tell people who you are, won't you?
I'm Sophie Storm Roberts, and my brand and business online is Challenge Sophie, and at the heart of it is everything I do is about challenging ourselves, and whether it's challenging the status quo, challenging our mindsets, challenging our limits and beliefs, challenging us physically, so that we can overcome obstacles, challenging the way things are in the world, and saying, actually, I think we could do better, or we can do this differently. And even just, being great and courageous in the way that we live our lives, and resilient in the face of the storms that life sends us. That's everything at the heart of what Challenge Sophie is about. And I quit my job 12 years ago. I used to work in tech in the London tech scene. My background's in business development, and was part of the growth team of what became one of the UK's fastest growing tech startups. And I quit there in 2012. And I launched this brand, Challenge Sophie. I had no idea what it was going to do, how it was going to manifest, but I was so passionate about this concept of challenging ourselves, and how important it is to take risks and be bold in life and be confident and resilient. So that's what it's all about.
Amazing. Can you pinpoint where that came from in terms of that adventurous spirit in you, the running towards the bits that other people shy away from?
It's funny because what it felt to me at the time is probably different to how I articulate it now, 12 years later. But how I would articulate it now is a pursuit of potential, and a desire to not let anything be in control of me or my life, and really noticing that one of the major things that holds us all back, and that kind of controls and seeks to define and limit us, is fear. And so when I started to challenge my fear and notice there's a fear here and that's keeping me held back, when I set myself a challenge that was directly in proportion, directly related to that fear, the fear just disappeared. And I thought, this is the most extraordinary thing I've ever discovered. Because if you can make your fear disappear by moving towards it instead of shying away, then that's magic. And so I just kept repeating that process. And when I was in my job as a early 22, 23-year-old in London, the fear, I felt it all around me, was these limitations and these boxes and these labels and this sort of this way of how life works, and the things you need to tick, the boxes you need to tick, and the way that you need to buy into the rules of society and how companies and progression and all of that sort of stuff works. And I thought, okay, this just doesn't really feel, it feels really limiting. And so I decided to challenge myself, and I decided to just put myself to the test, physically, mentally, emotionally, in the biggest way that I could imagine. And it was an adventure race in the jungle of Borneo. It was my first ever challenge. And I started to get fit, and I started to go, and I just had this outlet outside of my work where I could put everything into it. And every time I pushed myself, I could go further and harder and deeper. And that was really the start of Challenge Sophie. And it was this, wow, actually, this is a part of my life where there are no limits. And the only limit is really, where my mind would take me or how my mind will limit me.
How did you first find out about the Borneo race? Where did that come from as an inspiration?
I literally think that so there was no social media. And I think I was on the tube and maybe saw an advert for British military fitness. And they were local to me in Fulham. Somehow I came across their website, basically, and they had this challenge on there. And the moment I saw it, I thought, that's the one. And I just signed up for it, and, just started trading for it, and went out to Borneo with 40 people I'd never met before. And it completely changed my life. There was this light bulb moment where we were on the summit of Mount Kinarvlu, which is part of the challenge. And we were racing in teams of four. So it was this really cool, it was a really amazing way to kind of enter into adventure sports and adventure racing, because it wasn't just about you. It was, your whole team together. And the team's result was obviously on the last person of the team to cross the finish line. So there's no point in the strongest person just running ahead. It was like using those strengths to help people, and how different people's strengths and weaknesses come into play in different situations and stuff. Yeah, there was a light bulb moment, and I remember standing on the summit of Mount Kinarvlu, and I was like, this is how I'm going to become the person I love to become. Like, this is it. It's not through my job in the office. It's not reading books. It's not watching, motivational talks. It's actually doing the really difficult and scary things and showing yourself what you're capable of.
It sounds like being a part of the team was really important to you for that transition.
Yeah, I think so. It was just a really unique experience, and to be able to share that was just amazing.
And was it straight home, straight out of the job, and the next life reinvents, or was there a period of transition change after the challenge?
Years.
Years.
Years. This was right at the beginning of my career. I was in that for another 6 or 7 years after that. So what happened after that was that I just kept pursuing both avenues. So on my weekends and my holidays, I was going and doing these challenges, and it was just such a fun period of my life. It was just, I was like, oh, adventure racing was really fun. Google it, adventure racing. What is this all about? This is amazing. You could go anywhere in the world to do this cool stuff, joining forums, meeting people. And then, it's like, oh, I climbed a mountain now. That's so cool. What other mountains can I climb? And then I signed up for this triathlon, and I loved the cycling element. And I was like, oh, cycling's really cool. Where else can I cycle? And so I decided to cycle Berlin to Paris in 24 hours because my grandmother lived in Paris. And I was like, that's cool. She does that. I could cycle there in 24 hours, go on another forum, meet some more people I'd never met before, meet them in a pub in Soho, plan the adventure on the back of a napkin. Off we go, cycling. No idea how to change a puncture. Never cycled more than 40 miles in my life before. But just so much gung-ho energy and drive and motivation. And that was because I had so much of that, that's what drove me to adventure in the first place, because I was like, I just didn't have an outlet to put that in my life.
And is that something you saw in yourself in childhood, or did that just develop in the sort of career chapter of your life?
I think it's probably always been there, and that ambition, that drive, that desire to pursue my potential. But I was very I am literally the epitome of the saying that it's not the winning that counts, it's the taking part. Because at school, I went to school in central London, we had terrible sports facilities, and we used to lose at everything. But I was like, I remember once I was about 16, and I did this I think it was maybe the half marathon, it was a mini marathon, it was a 3-mile run. And I like this picture of me, and I'm on the start line, and I literally got this like, most people would they'd just be at the back. So like if they, so the faster people wouldn't have the embarrassment, the faster people are taking them and stuff. But I'm right down the start line. Anyway, my mom like jokes right about this now. She's like, they even had to call an ambulance because I was like so out of breath and just it was like the hardest thing I'd ever done in my whole life. It's like trying to run 3 miles. Just really like not fit, and just none of this was my bag at all. Never went adventuring with my family or camping or hiking or anything like that.
But just why not just throw yourself into the next one and keep climbing the ladder?
Well, I think that I uncovered the way that I was going to become who I wanted to become. And I uncovered a huge ability, mental and physical ability for endurance. And that was quite kind of striking to me. I didn't realize that was there.
I think it's a really interesting point. So in a business sense, people don't tend to think about work capacity and endurance as something that's developed and can be trained and learned. And I think it so is. So we're fortunate that we very high performance environment in terms of where we are, like national leading experts in their specialisms. So when we get interns and new starters come in, they try and work at the same pace and as hard as the people that were at the front of that race, running as fast as possible. And you can't just do it in a year. It takes time and effort and investment and going through those trials and tribulations and challenges that you describe, but in a professional sense.
Yeah.
And that's what's amazing, seeing them over time developing things. But they certainly end up out of breath, and sometimes we almost have to call an ambulance because trying to keep up with the directors in the team.
And it all comes from that sense of why and your purpose. And that's the thing. If people come in and they see somebody else doing something that they haven't harnessed their own personal why, it's more of an external thing from them, then there's always going to be some kind of burnout. And unfortunately, that is how most of us operate, is by external motivation, like needing external validation. But the moment that's not there, then it's just not sustainable. But being able to tap into that internal, you're doing it for the process, for the growth, for the pursuit of potential. When you're able to detach yourself from, and your identity and your self-worth from the result, that's where you can create this like extraordinary high performance that is sustainable.
Completely. So our head of people, we're really fortunate. He's got a PhD in performance psychology. So he's our very own Dr. Steve Peters, genius guy about what he does. So he used to work in private sector consultancy. He'd get sent into massive businesses where the boards had fallen out and couldn't even talk to each other anymore, and he'd have to put them back together. And he said if he worked 40 or 50 hours in that environment, he hated who he was, he hated his life, he was shattered. He worked way more than that with us now, but he worked with a group of people who all have the same purpose, the same drive, the same collected team spirit, works way more than that now, and said he finds it liberating and uplifting. It's my business, so I get to work in it every day, and I have that same inner purpose that you described. And people will say to me, oh, do you not get tired or fed up with the business? I'm like, does anyone tell a professional surfer to stop surfing?
Yeah.
This is my love and passion. And other than throwing some weights around in the morning and trying to be a good husband and father, this is the love of my life, other than my wonderful wife. And so it's an absolute privilege to get to do it. But when I worked in the public sector in academia, it was horrible. I had that double life as well. It wasn't who or how I wanted to be. So in that 6-year period from realizing who you could be on top of that mountain to taking the step into business, did you increasingly find yourself becoming more of the challenge you and less of the work career you? Did it completely divide in terms of people? Were you very different in both places?
No, I would say that they massively complemented each other. It was like a positive domino effect where I was I know about this about myself. I would struggle in places where there's red tape and there's, all of that sort of stuff that just holds up. I really struggle with that. I was in a very, very, very fast growth environment. We were literally like, the company grew from 10 to 300 over 3 years. And people. And, so they were literally lapping up my energy and my drive and ambition. And I was kind of harnessing that and fueling it. Exactly as you said, trading that every single weekend when I would go out and challenge myself. So it just was this like really positive knock-on effect of everything like fueling each other.
Amazing. So what was the thing that made you step and go, I want to do my own business version of this now? It's not just a hobby or a sporting passion. It is, I want this to be my business too.
So I was just becoming increasingly frustrated with what I was in. And even though it was, there were these periods where I was able to just spread my wings and go and do things as our business grew, I was being asked more and more to sit in my box and just to tick over. And, we were going to sell the business, and the message was just stay here, bide your time, sell your shares.
I feel like word just works very well with you.
It doesn't.
Just wait, just be patient.
Settling and just, yeah. And I came to this crossroads. It wasn't actually a desire of, I want to turn this into my business. It was almost, I need to do something different. I need to make this choice at this moment. Do I stay and choose security and choose, all of everything that I feel, which would be amazing? Or do I just take the leap of faith and go for it and see what else I can create? And I didn't know, how this business was going to evolve, or that I could do it, or how to do it, or what the business was going to be. I didn't have any of those answers. But once I started to look into the future and how that might look, and really let myself dream and really embody like what I would be doing if I could bring more of my passions and more myself. And also we were in an East London office. I was running a team of sort of 20, 30 people. I had to be in that room every single day to earn my money. And I wanted to travel and explore and things that so many people want to do. But it was just the time and all of that sort of social media was just starting to teeter. And I saw people doing incredible things. And I just thought, well, if they can to figure out how to do it, then maybe I can. And I think that's the thing with like making big decisions and being courageous in life. It's not actually about the decision in and of itself. It's more the version of ourselves that we're committing to being by making that decision.
Yeah. When you were describing the story there, we were very fortunate to go visit Richard Branson a year ago, and talking to him about his journey and process. He still ascribes by that, take the opportunity and figure out how to do it when you get there.
Yeah.
There was literally like hearing you tell that story is like echoes of him sharing that one as well. Had you been around entrepreneurship and business earlier in your life or in your family, or to give you an idea of a framework of how you build something, or were you literally learning it all as you were on together?
Yeah, not at all.
Really?
I remember asking my boss, I said to him, how do you start a business?
That must have scared the heck out of him. Like, oh my God, you're going to go there.
I think it was even before then. I think that I was just so intrigued. I was like, how do you do it? Because he'd started multiple businesses. And I remember just saying to him, how do you start the business? And he was like, oh, once you've done it, you can just do it again. But to me, it was like, I literally have no idea. Like, I just couldn't even imagine it. But I obviously was very by osmosis being around entrepreneurs and that sort of mindset. And I think that what I did was not think, how can I start a business, or what is this business? I thought, what is my why? I had absolute clarity over that. And I just went out into the world and started championing it. And I just looked at, I just did everything. I was like, okay, I had a blog. I talked about it on social media. I just started. And obviously I had a background in business development. So I started, my first brand I ever got contacted to work with was Adidas. But I knew how to build relationships. And
how did you feel when that first contact came in from them?
it was cynical. I mean, not because it was like, let's say Adidas, but I mean, I was still in my job at this time, I think. I remember getting in a message on Twitter, and it was London PR company used to represent them. And he said, everyone in my office is following me on Twitter. We come and have a chat with us. And 2 days later, I was like running with Haile Selassie in Hyde Park and had a bunch of free Adidas kit and shoes. And I was like, this is so cool. I've probably had like 200 followers on Twitter at that time.
What do you think they saw in you at that point that made them go, this is a person, a brand that we just want to be associated with?
I think that I was, how now social media is all about storytelling content, and it's not about being the first or the fastest or the best. It's about the stories that you tell that relate to people. That's what I was doing. So that's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to be somebody that was put on a pedestal. It was like, look how amazing the view is from this mountain that I've climbed. I always wanted to be someone that was like, hey, I've climbed this mountain. I'm going to break down the steps and show you how you can do it too. And I wanted people to be able to see everything that I was doing and think, if she can do that, I can do that, or I can do my version of that. you know,
And was that just because authentically that's the thing you took the most pride and pleasure in doing? It
Yeah.
came from a place of, that's the story I want to tell.
yeah, I was like, I'd broken free from, from all these like these rules of society and all these limitations and the boxes and the labels, all of the stuff. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. But I've discovered something that's magic. I want to share this with people so you can do it too.
Okay. So when you walked out the door for the last time, you thought, right, tomorrow I have me, this is my business, this is my brand. What was the offer? What was the business you thought you were going to put out there, and how has that evolved over the years?
There was no, honestly, when I walked out the door, it was as soon as I sat at the first day of my new life, I sat there with a blank piece of paper and some pens and I started my mapping.
I love it. It's literally jump out of the plane and figure out
Yeah.
flying the way there.
Exactly. But the quote that made me make that decision was, a ship in a harbor is safe, but that's not what a ship is built for. Go sailing. And so it was just like, right, I'm safe, I'm sailing now, I'm out of the harbor. And then you just figure out, where to go, how to weather the storms.
I wonder if that's the link back to you spoke at that about how you've always written. It's been a big part for you. So clearly we just had that input as well in terms of quotes and inspiration and things. Do you remember when you first read or heard that quote?
Absolutely. It was just before I got the job.
Oh, really? That close to it?
Yeah. It was really the thing that got my mind thinking, hold on a sec, I'm in my safe harbor. Maybe I should go. And if I do go, what does that look like? And it was more the vision and the dream of like how that would feel and how it could look. And that inspired and galvanized me so much that there was almost no turning back. And it was almost like, I'll figure this out. And, of course, everyone around me was asking the questions you asked me, but how and what? And shouldn't you do this? And shouldn't you do that? And this is crazy. Everybody has these dreams, but, I was like, well, I'm just going to go and do it and figure it out.
But how liberating and empowering having the confidence to know you're going to figure it out is. And it just gives you momentum to keep going and learning. And as you said, if you're willing to find the right forum, Google the information that's out there, everything we need to build businesses is available in the world now. Yeah. So one of our most amazing former interns and now members of our natural capital team, he came to us for a bit and did an internship and then went back to do a master's. And we'd been recording on a podcast and took the mick a bit saying, no, we should do a master's now because all of it's available on YouTube anyway. And he rang up and was like, is that aimed at me? And I was like, yeah, it was. And he came back and he's awesome now. But it's true. If you want to learn how to be an entrepreneur, you just have to look at Silicon Valley and stuff, right? It's a badge of honor for the amount of people that dropped out of college to go start their own business and followed their passion, because you can learn just as many lessons out there. People often are surprised when I say this. So I did nearly a decade at uni. I went degree straight into PhD. Well, we've got people in the company never stepped foot inside uni or went for a day and then left.
2 months.
Sorry, 2 months. But it doesn't matter. You need to find your experiences and your passion where it was. So where was the first big break? So you're out, you're on your own, you go from blank sheet of paper to when did it start becoming a real business for you? What were the things that you can pinpoint and go, that's when I felt like I was in business. That's what would have been a client, so I was progressing forward.
Yeah, it's like that progress, graph that goes up and down like this, with growth and stuff like that. So on the way, I basically had a cushion of money. So I'd saved up enough money to buy my first property. And then that was just at the point where I was like, oh, I'm now quitting my job. So I basically used that money to kind of buffet me.
As opposed to buying property.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went all in on this.
Way to back yourself.
I mean, I think, and I learned that backing yourself thing is something I come back to over and over again, is that when you make these big moves and you back yourself, it moves the world in a way around you that would never happen if we keep one foot on the safe harbor and one foot kind of like, dipping our toe in the water and seeing what it's like. And like you said, that's just become part of me now. It's part of who I identify with, as being someone who is courageous and backs themselves. But all of that stuff,
the confidence compounds, right?
Yeah.
The confidence in yourself compounds at each decision, and you're more committed to it and it builds for it. We had exactly the same situation. So in the environment sector, projects were tiny before we started, like £20,000, £50,000. And I remember when we first talked about auction conservation, I said, we're going to manage £100 million portfolio for land and for conservation. We literally would get laughed at. Within 3 years, we managed a £150 million portfolio. No one's laughing there. So,
amazing.
Yeah. Sorry, you keep it.
No, I love it. It's so incredible. And people need to hear these stories, of just having that dream and that conviction. And what I was about to say is that for me, I guess when I was younger, I had those ideas that that's how I could feel, but I didn't actually feel that way. It's only because I went repeatedly through one challenge after the next, battling down the fears, and like you said, harnessing, training that confidence, training that courage, training all of those tools, so that when it came to the point of me being able to quit my job, I did back myself, because I'd already learned how to back myself through doing Ironmans and cycling London to Paris in 24 hours and doing all of these things. So it's that training process that got me to the point of being able to jump off the cliff and back myself. And then it was like, okay, now we've really got to,
During the
success.
specific challenges, I mean, not everything goes to plan, right? You must have had mechanicals on the bike, injuries,
Yeah.
big challenge. What are some of those dark moments when you're in a challenge that you had to really dig in and fight through them?
Oh, I think the most prominent one is just questioning yourself and, just battling with the inner critic of like, I haven't done enough training, or it's too cold, or I'm too tired, or I'm scared of this, or what happens if that happens. It's all of that ruminating and the self-doubt and stuff like that. And, just battling constantly with, am I going to, the part of you that wants to quit, basically.
And do you talk to that inner you? Some people yell at it or argue back, or how do you deal with that inner chimp, as Steve Peters
Yeah.
would say?
Yeah, it's you got to have, a lot of good tools in your toolkit. So something like, sometimes I have it, there's been certain circumstances where I'll literally just repeat a mantra to myself over and over again, so that there is no space for other words to get into my brain. And that might be like, somebody's come to mind, like climbing. So I did this Alpine coast to coast challenge, and that was something that really put me on the map. You asked me about what was, a point, and I was like, okay, this is now got legs and a vision. And the Alpine coast to coast, something no one else in the world has done. I climbed the highest mountains in the 8 Alpine countries and went between them by cycling. So it took me 32 days, and I think it was sort of like it was sort of like 45,000 meters of climbing, and the mountains were obviously the tallest one was Mont Blanc, so like full blown, like really serious mountains, 4,000-meter peaks, ice axes, crampons, all that kind of stuff. They would take me between 2 to 3 days to climb, and then it would take me about 2 to 3 days of cycling 150 k's a day to get to the next mountain.
So you're having to recover on the bike from the climb to do the next climb.
Recovery, that is an interesting topic. I don't know if there really was much recovery.
No.
It's just it was more like training on it to just get stronger to do the next thing. That was more what it was.
So what year was that challenge?
So I think that was 2014.
Okay. So how far ahead of time, I mean, knowing you might just decide to set off and go do it, but how far ahead of time did you conceive it, and what was the training and the work up towards doing it?
So I conceived of it. I did, I'm sure everybody is familiar with the 3 Peaks Challenge in the UK. I did that just before I quit my job. So it must have been 2011. But we cycled between them. So we did the 3 mountains and cycled 450 miles between them in 3 days. And I thought this was like, I'd always wanted to do something that was multi-day to really push myself. And it was the first time I'd ever done that, because everything I'd done before then was like, half day or 1 day kind of thing, or 24-hour challenge. And, or multiple days, but not like full endurance. We were on the go for 20 to 21 hours a day, and we slept for 3 to 4 hours. And I came off the back of that. I was like, okay, I'm ready for bigger things now. I've got this, and what can I do? And that's when I came up with this idea for the Alpine coast to coast, because I'd already been doing quite a lot of climbing in the Alps. I loved it there. But what I found was that sitting on a bike, I don't do quite a lot of cycling, but sitting on a bike for sort of, let's just say over 12 hours, things start to get really sore. And, your neck and your bum and just everything just aches. And so I was like, there is a limit to how long you can actually sit on a bicycle for. But what I found is when you get off and you climb a mountain, you're using the same parts of your body, but different muscle groups, different ways, and you can just climb a mountain. I was like, this is extraordinary. But then, I was still in my job. It sat on a Google Docs for ages. I quit my job. Then I was like, fully into just literally what I was thinking about was how I'm going to pay my rent this month. And then I think basically I got a job for a little while. And then I moved to Chamonix, and that had always been my dream. Quit your job in London, move to the Alps. So I did it. And that was when I decided, right, I'm going to do the Alpine coast to coast. And I didn't really do much training. I remember, and you can find this on my blog, but I remember before it, I did one ride and I came up with this theory called confidence training. And I was like, it's really interesting because, again, going back to that conversation we had about being like externally, having these external things, a lot of times when people are training for something, they're very motivated by a specific goal, time, PB, something external that motivates them to push. And that doesn't motivate me. I am motivated by how, by what I can achieve. And what I found was when I didn't have that specific goal to aim for, that I was able to achieve so much more than I possibly thought, because I got out of my own way. And because my self-worth wasn't attached to this goal. So yeah, I basically just kind of went off and did it. And
It sounds like you have a superpower for suffering, that you can just decide, I am just going to put up with this and tolerate it, the discomfort, the pain, the drive.
It's what I call the pain cave.
Yeah.
So that's where the magic happens.
And this was a pain mountain range,
Yeah.
a cave, right?
There's I think there's a cycling guy that made them, but there's hoodies and they say, if you need me, I'll be in the pain cave.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that mindset, of just like, that's where it happens, the grind, like, what it's like you go to the gym every morning, but entrepreneurially, like, you just got to keep showing up, and you've got to be able to face those the difficult times and times that you want to quit, and the deeper you go, the deeper you want to go.
Adore it. Absolutely adore it. So you've mentioned some of the places, but where else in terms of geography and parts of the world have really left their mark on you?
Scotland. Scotland is my favorite place on the planet. I'm completely obsessed. I adore Scotland. I've been all over, and I really love Scotland. Other places, Patagonia was extraordinary. Obviously I'm really drawn to kind of the mountains and, that nature, wilderness, that kind of thing. I do think that this country is incredible, and nothing makes me feel homesick. Like, I love traveling and I love it, so much. But when you come back to England and you're like, oh, I don't know, you just get these beautiful.
We're really lucky. So we've got land from Cornwall to the Welsh coast, across to Norfolk and up, and we've got 4 big estates in Scotland. The furthest north is 15,000 acres in the Cairngorms. And when we first went to view it, Josh, our photographer, was like, this is like 5 different countries in one place. So you had like Argentina in one area, there's a bit of rainforest in the other, there was like river valley, there was still snow on the hills. You've got to come and see the Cairngorms place. It is spectacular.
I would absolutely love to.
One of the challenges with seeing the places, but also being acutely aware of our impact on the planet, is that it's traveling, flying especially, is not without its footprint. How do you think about that and balance your enjoyment with impact in terms of what you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's, none of us are perfect with that at all. And I try to make sure that whatever I do, is sustainable in terms of like the tour operators that I work with and that kind of thing. I think that a huge part of helping people become custodians for nature and for sustainability is actually introducing them to that, because if they haven't seen the benefit of it or felt the benefit of it, then they don't know why it's so important to protect it. So that's kind of like a big part of it for me, is being able to share the benefits of nature and the outdoors. And that's also why I love Scotland so much, because one of my top 10 experiences in the world is taking the sleeper train from London to Scotland. And lots of people fly, or they might go to to the cities or whatever, but just knowing that this extraordinariness is right there at the top of our country, and we can get there, and you can get there overnight on a train that basically feels like Harry, like
The Hogwarts Express.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
cool. It's literally the best.
I have one slight difficulty with a sleeper train.
I do.
I
You can't
don't
sleep.
fit in the
Oh, you don't sleep.
in
Okay,
the
you can't
beds.
fit. Okay.
Yeah, a little bit hanging out of the
Yeah.
beds there. Outside of that, it is playful and romantic and nice, and my kids would love it. So we're just reading them Harry Potter at the moment. So the idea of going on the sleeper train, they would love. And our team that are based in London do that regularly as we go up. So it is pretty magical. It's interesting. We had recently had the amazing author John Elkington on the podcast, and so he's 75, was the godfather of sustainability. And I said to him, and he's been literally all over the world, like 100 countries. And I said, you acutely more than anyone else know the impact of your travel. Do you feel guilty about it? And he went, nope. He went, my impact, what I've been able to share and tell, I hope has had more of a positive impact than the net cost of that travel. And that's the barometer we try and use. So increasingly I'm asked to go out and speak to conferences in the US about nature finance and things, and like Davos and things. And so far we've gone, unless we genuinely think the impact and the reach it's going to give us outweighs the cost of the impact of us traveling, we're not going.
Yeah.
So we've stayed UK based with those one we've done in Europe. Outside of that, we've stayed in the UK at the moment. But increasingly, we are going to take it, and I might speak at New York Climate Week. But it's got to be something where I can say the juice was worth the squeeze.
I think that's amazing because it feels very much like your, like the values that you embody are right at the heart of that, and they've got to be, so being able to stand by that is really, really important.
People have really astute bullshit barometers, I think. They know if you're not being authentic or truthful or one thing I've learned in trying to be the best leader possible is as soon as you have a say-do gap. So if I say we're about the environment and we're about conservation and I don't behave that way in my life, how can you expect anyone to take the business or you as a person credibly? It flows back to the reason you can talk about adventure and spirit and pushing yourself forward and finding that is because you've literally lived it. And you'll have the calluses and the bruises and the scars from doing it all, which is super important. The exciting thing is, what's the next chapter look like? What are you excited about in terms of the future?
I'm really excited about fear and courage. So I've been going really deep into that this year, and essentially realizing, at the heart of everything that I've been doing, and exactly as you just said, like everything that I talk about or everything that I put into my talks or my workshops or, out on social media is lived experience. It's not something that I've read in a book and thought, this sounds interesting or this would be a great way to improve your mindset. It's that actual action piece. And I think that's all we can really ever do in life is to take action. And I've really been trying to think about this huge problem, which is so many of us live in fear. And the reason that's such a huge problem is because it causes us so much stress when we're just living with the inner critic and the imposter syndrome and the fear, the doubt, the settling, the playing it small. Not only is that exhausting and super draining and waste of, our time, energy and resources, but also it's a huge, all of that we're missing out on the other side of that. So all of this potential and life and all of the things that we would love to do if we weren't worried about, all of the things that could go wrong or failure or, just the way that fear gets in the way and we sabotage.
How and where do you feel fear?
Oh, do I? Well, I think that's an amazing question for anybody to ask themselves when you're feeling something that's, and anxiety is a form of fear. Where is it? And to open up a dialogue with it and ask it, what are you here to say? And where do you come from? And my kind of 3 A's are awareness, acceptance, and action. And, if we can have that awareness of okay, this voice is here. It's here for a reason. It's trying to protect me, but actually it's keeping me, it's trying to keep me safe, but it's just blocking me from doing what I really want to do. And that could just be the smallest thing. I mean, deciding so many people really struggle to do something on their own. Might be going to a gym class or signing up for anything, right? Going to an event or a talk or, doing something on your own is a massive fear for a lot of us. And think about what we're missing out on because of that fear. That's a really small thing, but the ripple effect of that can be huge because later on you could found a whole new hobby or a passion or met a whole new friendship group or find yourself on some amazing trip or adventure around the world because you said yes to doing something on your own. So I think that, yeah, like knowing where that fear is, in your body, having that dialogue with it, and also thanking it. It's not like you said earlier, like, shut up, go away, just kind of berating the inner critic. It's being grateful. Thank you so much for being here. I know you're trying to protect me, but actually I'm okay. I've got this. And then we need to create a bank of evidence so that when that inner critic does, roar and gets louder, that we've got this bank of evidence of like, okay, I hear you. Thank you for coming to the conversation right now. But the last time I did something that challenged me and I felt this scared to do it, but also this level of like excitement of like, well, what if could happen? All of these amazing things happened. And that's how we then get the inner critic to quiet down.
So we look at CVs bottom up.
Oh, cool.
Because the thing I want to know is, has someone achieved something that was difficult, complex, required them to outwork it, suffer, go beyond? Because if they can evidence they've done that, if they've got that bank of evidence that they can push beyond their limits and beyond what they thought was possible, if they want to be here and perform, they will. Whereas people who have got, that doesn't mean we don't hire people with perfect academic records and multiple PhDs and masters. We do as well, but not without that bit too, because you need both. And what that gives you then is, as a team, whatever challenge we get, it's never can we do it, it's how long is it going to take and how are we going to do it?
Yeah.
Because every single person in our team has overcome something ridiculous. Like, we started last year with a list of the 20 things that we'd been collectively told were impossible that we'd now done. So we literally have the impossible list that have just been ticked off. And we did this presentation where everything changed from impossible to possible. And we've done it, which is amazing. So that's why we go that way up. So fear and courage was your other key thought pattern at the moment.
Because that's the thing is, these obstacles and the fear that it elicits, it can just stop us in our tracks. And what we need is courage. We need to be brave. We need to say, actually, let's look beyond this. And actually, I'm going to face this rather than shying away from it. So yeah, I've just been super interested in that. That's what my book is about. I've created a workshop series. I'm going to the States in a few weeks to kind of semi-launch it over there. And
whereabouts are you heading?
I'm heading to Orlando, and then the rest of the trip is TBC at the moment.
Nice.
Figuring it out. But basically, yeah, that's my huge drive in life, is how can I help people get out of our own way and unlock potential, be more resilient and transform our inner critic into our inner champion.
We all need massively more amounts of that. If there's one place you haven't visited yet or one challenge you haven't faced, what's on the chat? In fact, let's do both. Place you'd like to visit next?
I would really love to go to Cape Town. I'd really love to go to Cape Town. I'd love to explore more of the UK as well.
We can help with that.
Yeah, I feel like I've done quite a bit, but it's just so much here, and it's just so amazing.
We're 400 kilometers, we may be 500 kilometers bottom to top now. I don't know what the route between all the OC estates would be. We'll have to ask Lat to work that out.
It's an OC challenge.
That's a challenge, yeah. And then the next challenge, is there one on the list that you're thinking about?
I get asked this question quite a lot, and you said earlier, that I have this sort of capacity or desire to suffer, and I think that I definitely have done. I don't feel like I have the same desire and capacity to put myself in the pain cave now. And so
that precipitates a why. Do you know why?
Yeah, I do know why, because it, it's a massive part of my journey, and it was all about figuring out these things. Like, I wanted to come face to face with fear and pain and discomfort and self-doubt over and over and over again, so that I could train myself and learn how to overcome them and how to, navigate them. But then once you kind of learn that, the why isn't there so much anymore. And I also realized that in the world that I am in adventure and challenge, it's, you do something to break free from or to create a new identity. But if you're not careful, you can just find yourself trapped in and another identity that you have to be slave to. And I didn't want to get myself in a situation where I was just having to one up myself over and over again, just because that was the path that I'd set for myself. You know, it's like somebody sells a business, you know, do you feel then you have to do another business and exit for more money? And there's just this culture of more and more and more. That
makes so much sense.
That's not my why.
So I've had that cycle a few times in life. So when I was at uni, I captained the Great Britain American football team in the US. So
Oh, wow.
niche sport. And that was my real transition. That was my facing of challenge and going from like pretty meek kid to an adult who realized that success was on the other side of hard work. And so I was the worst athlete on the team by a mile, but I just outworked everyone. And that was my realization, that just outwork everyone. Whatever the question is, the answer's hard work. When I first started doing that, was such a pent up chip on my shoulder and aggression from a crappy childhood. Story for another podcast. People want that one. So I just ran literally headfirst into everything. But after 6 or 7 years of doing that, I would still hit the person I needed to make the tackle, but I wasn't looking for it anymore. And by the time I finished playing, so we won the national title playing for Birmingham Uni in my final season. And I literally gave away every piece of kit and equipment I had, because the amount of people who are in their 40s still playing at a weekend, falling apart because they decided their identity was that they played American football. So I needed to find the next identity. And then I went into sort of competitive powerlifting and things like that. And you end up more weight on the bar, and it's such a drug because the numbers are so visible and clear, and it's just another kilo until your joints are falling apart and you're ripping muscles off the bones and things like that. And you're like, I probably don't need to lift any heavier. So now I lift because I love it and it's fun, and I put virtually no weight on the bar. And in my 20s, people would ask how much you lifted, and I have great pride in telling them the numbers. Now I just laugh. If you get asked that question, it's like nothing, virtually nothing. But it's chapters of life. As you're saying, you don't need to be wedded to that identity. What's the next identity? Is it author? Is it speaker?
Yes, it's the tools that you take with you, and it's who you become in the process. I think that's core for me. It's not what I'm doing or what I'm achieving, or it's not even what I'm interested in other people either. It's who are we becoming in the process, and why is that important?
You're absolutely right. Love it. Love it. Our time is coming to an end, sadly.
Oh, sadly.
However, my favourite question, which is at the end of our podcast, is what's the one question I haven't asked you wish I had?
That's a way to put me on the spot.
It's such a good question, isn't it? I adore it.
Weirdly, what's come to me is what gets you out of bed in the morning.
What will get you out of bed in the morning tomorrow?
Yeah. But yeah, like what, you know, because that's like connecting to your sense of purpose. But I have to think of the answer. Do I have to think of the answer?
Yeah.
See?
Of course, you set your own exam question. It's the easiest one to answer, isn't it?
Let me ask you first then. What gets you out of bed in the morning? And if you say bladder,
Not that old yet.
You know, no, but like most,
certainly.
you know, or like my cat or my child. Obviously, that's not the purpose of the question.
I don't think about it. I just jump out and know that I'm going to go lift. That like for 15 years, that's what I do from at home. I get out of bed in the morning, kiss my wife on the cheek, get out of bed, drink a double espresso, and go down and lift weights. It's funny. That is my identity as a person when I'm at home. But I don't think, oh, I'm going to lift today or not. It's just what I do first.
Yeah.
Actually, the only wrinkle to that now is so I've got an 8-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old little boy. And if George is awake when I get up, he demands his breakfast first. So that's made before I go down into the gym. I am incredibly fortunate to be living a life that is 10 times better than I ever thought it could possibly be. So rough childhood, parents who were builders and cleaners and manual workers, not a lot of money when I was growing up. I didn't potentially think it was possible that I'd be in properties like this, talking to people like you about an amazing business we've built, and I get to work with 30 people that I genuinely adore. And lots of people say that about their business, but ask anyone in our team, the culture. I mean, the standard joke is it's a cult, it's not a culture, which Elle's created, thank you, Elle. But the genuine passion, care, love for one another is so special. And my thing is, I just want every day to last as long as possible, because we're growing as a business at such a pace. This chapter's going to be gone before I know it. And we're trying to hold that as long as possible. I don't want us to grow too fast. I don't want the business to go too soon, because it's such a special period to be in. So that's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Brilliant answer.
Now you have to answer it too.
I hope you put all of that on the podcast as well, because I think that's gold dust for people to hear that and see that, and you can really feel that, from your website, from all this kind of stuff. The only thing is, I would love to hear more of that see that on your website and more of your story, because there is a bit about the team, but I'd love
It's
to.
funny you should say that. We literally just recorded our 100th
Okay.
podcast. So yours will be like 102 or 3 or something. I was made to be the guest for the 100th.
Nice.
So Elle
Okay,
sat in my
great.
chair and interviewed me. They got me to cry 3 times, all talking about.
No, they really do.
Whenever I get complimented or anything or about the business, my immediate response to that is thank you, that's very kind. Celebrate the team's achievement. But they told me I had to do it, so I did the podcast in the end.
And that is amazing to celebrate your team. But I don't know enough about your story to kind of, but I'd be intrigued to hear more.
Sophie, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
What gets me out of bed in the morning? So I just feel like it's such a privilege to be able to live and do the things that, light us up and challenge us and excite us. And, just this idea of, instead of thinking, oh, I have to do this, or I have to go to work, or I have to train, or I should, we get so caught up in the shoulds and the has to and stuff like that. And again, it just takes us back to that place of doing something for the external reward and validation. But actually, what gets me out of bed in the morning is kind of like this feeling of I get to create whatever I want with my life today. And I know that I'm incredibly fortunate for having that sort of freedom to be able to do that. But that is why I've made the decisions I've made to, to have that freedom and be able to move your life in any direction. But knowing that you can make an impact, knowing that you can have a conversation that could, move your life in a different way. I also think about like the ripple effects, and sometimes if I'm at like a low point or something challenging, I just think, what are the positive ripple effects I can put out into the world? What emails can I send? What can I put out on social media? Who can I connect with? How can I be kind to somebody? How can I do something for somebody else? Just all of these little things. And I think that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, having literally no idea what's going to happen today, or what tiny little actions or things I might do that could end up leading to a whole different, serendipitous meeting of people and events in the future.
Love it. Where can people find out more about you and what you do?
They can find out about me on, obviously, the internet. Everywhere it's Challenge Sophie. That's my website and my social media channels. And I'm on LinkedIn, Sophie Storm Roberts. It's been such a pleasure being here. And I'd love any of your listeners want to reach out and share their stories or anything like that. I'm always open to having conversations.
Thank you. Really appreciate the time.
Pleasure.